Hello, this is Ashley. Thank you for joining me on my podcast today. I have a group of 3 wonderful ladies here joining me. If you guys would like to start off by introducing yourself, you can tell us your name and your background that you have in dance, just a brief something, maybe how many years you've been dancing, where you danced growing up, maybe kind of what styles you were trained in, anything like that you would like to share. So,
cool.
Good. Maddie, would you like to start?
Yeah. I'm Maddie, and I'm from California, and I've only been dancing for 6 years, so that's a lot less than normal. But yeah, I danced at a super tiny studio in Escalon, California, and I was trained in like competition style, so like jazz, contemporary, lyrical, ballet, not really tap or hip hop. I was really bad at those, so I just didn't take those classes. But yeah, I also have experience in aerial silks and aerial hoop.
Oh,
So yeah,
fancy.
it's so fun.
Hi, I'm Raya. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I've danced this will be my 15th year, but I spent 14 years at the same studio under the same director for all of that time. And then that studio was pretty small, only about 70 kids, I think. And then it was mostly comp styles, pretty much everything except for ballroom.
My name's Olivia. I'm from Connecticut. I've been dancing since I was 2. I bounced between 2 studios growing up. I was at one since I was 2, and then I transferred to another studio when I was 10. I'm very versatile when it comes to dance, but I will say that there are some strong suits in there, like contemporary. I love contemporary. I love me some modern. So I would say those are like my favorite ones.
Good. All right. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I'll say again, my name is Ashley. My background is, like Olivia said, started dancing when I was 2, and I was at a few different studios growing up, but I was on a competition team for a long time until I graduated my senior year of high school. I was trained in ballet, jazz, contemporary, tap, and hip hop. Those were the main ones. More emphasis on like contemporary and jazz, because those are what we competed at our competitions. Oh, and I grew up in Aurora, which is just a suburb of Chicago here. So I love that we have views from like pretty much all around the country here going on. I would like to point out that all 4 of us here are majors in the LUC dance program, so we share some commonalities now of the dance training that we're receiving. You can take a minute to think about this if you need to, but our first question is going to be, explain a time when a dance teacher wronged you and how it made you feel.
Oh yes, where do I begin? So I was doing this dance. It was a contemporary dance, and it was like really hard. Okay, and at this time I had only been dancing. That was my 5th year dancing. And all of the other girls that I've been dancing with have been dancing for like at least 10. So I was definitely at the bottom of the ranks there. I felt like I was able to keep up pretty good. I was impressed with myself, but clearly the teacher did not think that. And so we were competing this dance, and we are 2 numbers away from going on stage. And she goes, "Maddie, you've messed up at the last 2 competitions. Don't ruin it for us this time." Like 2 numbers before we're going on stage, I'm like, oh, like that's not what you say to somebody. And of course I messed up because there was just that extra pressure, like, oh, I need to be perfect, because if not, I'm letting everybody down. And I'm actually the worst dancer ever. And there were a lot of negative thoughts that came with that, and I think it just made me feel like worse about myself because I was already at the bottom. And people saw me as like the worst dancer. Like it just kind of drove that home, and it stung in some ways. That was like, that's not okay. So yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. When did that happen? How long ago was that?
Like 2 years ago.
2 years ago? Okay.
Roughly.
Yeah, that's not good to be told that, especially right before you go on stage, definitely.
No.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have one to share?
Yeah, I've got one.
Yeah, okay.
So this was in my senior year of high school, and we were down to 4 girls, and we just lost one. That was kind of more of like she was like a bonding person between like the 5 of us, but she had left. And then it had just been a really rough year. This was in like September probably. And basically everyone thought I had an attitude, except for my best friend. Because I was just like really frustrated with dance in general. I was frustrated with our teacher. I wasn't actually really frustrated with my teacher. I was frustrated with a couple of my peers that were having more grace given to them than I thought that I was receiving. So obviously I was frustrated. And we had one day where like apparently I didn't take a correction, and like I don't know, my dance teacher ended up saying something about how the whole group wasn't trying hard enough and that it wasn't worth what our parents were paying for. And at that point my parents were talking a lot about how like paying for dance was really difficult because I was in like 9 competition dances that year, and like those competition fees are so expensive. And so they were talking about that with me, and so that like really was just like, so I guess I had a little bit of like an RBF per se, but then somehow the conversation shifted and it ended up being, we were with 5 other girls in the room and then the 4 in the senior company, and apparently she thought we had to go talk everything out, and so she sent the 4 seniors away, started working with the 5 that were still there, and we all went into her office, and then for some reason the 2 girls that I wasn't that I thought were receiving like special treatment, they were kind of, they were receiving some sort of special treatment, and they were really good friends, and it was me and my best friend in there, and they decided that that was a good time to rip my best friend and I a new one, especially me, and tell us that we were everything that was wrong with the studio, but I had like my dance teacher had obviously put us in a position for that to happen, and like let them have that power, and was not there to mediate whatsoever. And that day I did not want to come to dance ever again. I remember I called my mom to meet me at my high school when I had like another dance commitment afterwards, and I was just bawling in the parking lot, and never wanted to go back to my studio again. I did, but it was really rough, and I ended up calling like my teacher that night whilst trying to go to homecoming with my friends, and it was just a whole crazy situation. And then I of course saw those 2 girls at that homecoming that had ripped me a new one earlier that day. So
Right, so it was those 2 other girls who like directly harmed you, but the teacher put you in the position for that to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
My
And,
turn?
yeah, Olivia, go ahead.
So this happened my freshman year of college.
Oh, so very
So,
recently.
I remember I was talking to one of my dance educators, and I was talking to her about how I wanted to pursue a professional career. And because I wasn't sure what the program would provide in that sense, so I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just something to have like a program open to kids if they wanted to continue dancing. I wanted to make sure that it was built for kids who wanted to pursue a professional career, because I know a professional career is not for everybody, but I just wanted to make sure it'd be the right fit for me. So I emailed her, and she pulled me aside after ballet one day, and I asked her my question. I was like, I love this program, I love everything it does for me, but I just want to make sure that like I'll leave it having a professional career. And she was like, well, I built this based off of how I got to my professional career, so I believe so, but what's your end goal? And I told her, I was like, I obviously want to be in a company, like little ones here and there, but my end goal is to be in, Martha Graham or Alvin Ailey, which has been my dream since like I was like 10. Obviously that's an end goal, and it's gonna take a while to get there, but I was like, that's what I want to do. And she looked me in my face and went, I want to name that high. And after that, I called my mom sobbing, and I told her that I wanted to leave the school, and it like completely ruined it for me. But I'm okay now, but that like totally just like threw me. And I was talking to her about doing a winter intensive, and it's for Martha Graham, and since she was in the program, she could get a discount. So one of my other teachers who was in it as well said that she would give me a discount. But then when she asked the other one if she wanted to give me the discount instead, since she's a higher up in the department, she looked at me in the face and said, no, I don't want to, and walked away. So that kind of stung, but at the end of it all, like, it just kind of feels like fire. I want to like prove her wrong in a sense, but like literally for a hot second, I started looking at other dance programs. But at the same time, like, I've made so many good connections here that I wouldn't want to leave just because one teacher that doesn't believe in me.
I can empathize with that because somebody looking at you and saying you're not good enough hurts.
Bingo.
I was having some hard feelings about like dance recently, and I was like, I think it's coming up from past experiences, and I know what it feels like for somebody to say you're not good enough, for somebody to put me on the side of the stage and say we don't want to feature you. I know what that feels like, and I know how hard it is to like work through that and believe in yourself when nobody else wants to.
What you're saying kind of goes into our next main question, because you were saying how you like talked to your therapist recently and you're feeling some of these things recently. And the question is, how do these moments that you've experienced, how does it like still affect you now?
I feel like since mine, even if it was old, like I feel like it would still affect me the same way, but since it's so new, like I feel like the wound is still fresh. And now I feel like whenever I'm in the presence of this specific person, I have like a target on my back, because I know like deep down, no matter how hard I try, like I'm never gonna be seen as good in their eyes. And what makes me shocked is that talking to upperclassmen, this is like a regular thing. They said that this person will put you in a bubble of things you can and cannot do, and will always continue in that bubble, which I think is really messed up as like a specific person.
Yeah.
So I feel like that kind of like stays with me, because just the fact that like I know like no matter how hard I try, like I'll probably never be seen as good enough. But I'll get over it.
I got very lucky, and I had like my best friend was there. She experienced the moment, and like luckily after that moment, both of our moms went to our teacher and were like, this is not okay. I had that really good support system of my best friend's mom, who's also worked for our studio director teacher that caused all of this, and then of course my mom, who was amazing and always great during that process. But like, I don't know, I just had to take like everything into my own hands, because I knew that like these other two girls were always going to be favored for no reason. I had to make sure I was like putting myself in a good environment. Like this summer I went to an intensive because I had been before, and I knew it was going to be a really positive experience for me to like turn it around before I went to college. But like obviously that costed money and time, and like I just had to like do that in my own hands because of what had happened before, where really I should have been able to have a positive dance experience and a positive senior year, when really it was the opposite. Which I mean sucked, but like I'm glad I like got through it, and I'm glad I'm at like a better place now, and I'm glad I had a good support system around me to make sure I was able to do that. But yeah.
I think the way that it's sitting with me now, like these past experiences, I do want to like say that there are incredible dance teachers out there, but I think now it's like it sits in a way that's like I know that I can be my own validation, and I'm like actively working towards that. And like it's like hard some days, because some days I'm like, wow, I suck, but like those thoughts don't ever leave you. But now I feel like I can make a choice of whether to believe them or not.
Very well said. I have the question of, did this teacher ever take accountability for what they did, or ever apologize?
I have another teacher for this one.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Straight out of COVID,
Okay.
we were doing a production of The Wizard of Oz, and I was the lion, and we did the show in September because obviously like COVID, like we still had to wear masks and stuff, so we did the show outside. And then when I finally came back to dancing after like COVID and being at home, my teacher was like, oh, you're really fat. And I was like,
What?
oh, and she was like, you like gained a lot of weight like during quarantine, like you don't look fit at all. And that caused me to like get,
oh my god, that's horrible.
So I like didn't eat, like it was really bad, like, and my mom was like freaking out. And then my dance teacher, in retaliation to that, she got mad at me, even though she kind of caused it. So she made me write like a journal of like everything I ate in a day to make sure I was eating. And she never apologized for anything, and I was just like, the whole reason why this all happened was because of you. and she was kind of acting like she did me a favor, and I was like, you caused all of this, so.
Yeah.
So she made you like journal like what you would
Yeah.
do next. So like.
And she used to say in front of the whole class, she would be like, give me your journal. And people would be like, what?
Oh.
And she would like go through, yeah.
I can see the intent behind that being like wanting you to be
turned into, like,
healthy,
a
but no,
humiliation.
yeah, that's not good.
But yeah, but needless to say, I never got an apology. Like, she thought she was like a savior and like helping me when in reality, like I was like absolutely like humiliated. And I was like, so now everybody knows my business. Like, thanks. You really did that.
Yeah.
I can't say I was ever like that publicly humiliated or like something that was like that personal.
Sorry guys,
to
I'm
me.
trauma dumping right now.
It's okay.
But like there was a moment where at the end of the year, for some reason, it was I went to a religious studio, like very like Baptist Christian.
The studio was?
Yeah, like the entire studio was like a
interesting.
Christian institution.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of lecturing about like God and God's teachings and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, one of those lectures turned into like all of us were like sitting around her chair. Like she had a chair in the corner of the room, and then somehow she was like pointing me out and was like something about like wanting like having forgiveness in like the end, because this was like probably like a month before I was gonna leave. And then she like kept looking at me and this other girl that I thought was like getting all this special treatment, and she was like, oh, I want you, like I don't want you guys to have bad blood. And I'm like in my brain I was like, there's no way I'm not gonna have bad blood with this girl. Like I still haven't spoken to her. I mean, it's November in college. Like haven't spoken to her since, because like she was just awful to me, did not deserve what she had and all this stuff. And I was just like this special treatment she was receiving, but she like made it sound like it was like my fault. And she was like, Raya, I just want you to like forgive, and I'm like, I'm not gonna forgive this girl ever. And then she turned it into something about her, and she's like, yeah, back with what happened in September, like about the situation I described earlier, she was like, I just want like I'm so upset that your mom came to me and that we never talked about that, and that's still on your heart and it's still affecting our relationship. And I was like, actually, like I did talk to you, because later I did talk to her about it, and she just, I don't know, she just thought it was like something that wasn't her fault. And she was all about like admitting to your wrongs.
But she didn't do that
But
herself,
she didn't do it
though.
herself, because I mean, obviously, like she was a Christ-led individual, and like that's what they teach you is like in Christianity is like you can be forgiven, but like you have to own up to your stuff. But she never did. So
all in all, no, they did not. They were not accountable for their actions by any means. I did in fact leave the studio, not immediately after that, but there were other things like going on outside of that, and I just needed. I left California as a whole. Like I moved in with my aunt after that, but yeah, I got like a text of like, hey, I heard you're leaving. I wish you the best of luck. But it was never like.
It was from that teacher.
Yeah, from like that teacher and like a few other ones that I taught at the studio, and it was like, I'm bummed to hear that you're leaving. I think I did get an apology from like the owner of the studio, and she was like, I'm sorry that you had that experience. I mean, the owner of the studio had her own problems too, and I'm pretty sure she didn't like me either. But like, she did say sorry, but from that particular teacher that like hurt me the most. No, she was like, she never took accountability for that, and I'm like, oh, like as the adult in this situation, like you should be like teaching how to like, take accountability, and like that didn't happen, and like I felt like I needed to apologize. And like that sucked. I felt like I needed to be like, I'm sorry I'm leaving, or like I'm sorry that like I wasn't good enough like in this dance, like I'm sorry. But
you shouldn't be. It should be they should be the ones apologizing.
Yeah.
Next kind of question, we'll try to keep moving forward. Do you think these people who have harmed you along the way, these teachers, do you think that they continue to say like hurtful things to students they have now?
God, I hope not.
So
I hope that they
my
learn.
teacher now, she moved to Indiana, and after everything happened, like we're really close now again because.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's good now. Like I'm still like I think about it every now and then, but I'm like not that it's an excuse, but I'm like, she was like we were really tight. So, but she moved to Indiana, so she's teaching there now. Now I feel like she's erring more on the side of caution.
That's good.
Because I think it's good, but from what I've seen, like I've gone to the studio with her, and from what I've seen her teach, like it's way different than how I was taught. So maybe she's on the road to.
Yeah.
Also, like, leave your, like, I don't know, my parents' big complaint when I was, like, leaving dance, when I was making the transition from, like, high school studio dance to, like, college, and we were just talking about, like, how, like, my mom was like, I don't think your college teachers are gonna get your emotions as involved in it, like, on the daily. Like, in your daily class, like, it's just gonna be about dance, and I was just, like, really excited for that. It's, like, why I was glad I had, like, a reset. Because like I had like the summer intensive reset, and then I went into where it was just about dance. Like it's not like whereas before it was like my emotions were just like they had to be involved all the time. They weren't supposed to be involved according to my dance teacher, but they just had to be. So like I don't know, that transition is like funky.
So we have this difference between like calling in versus calling out, and Raya, you reminded me of this when you said your mom and your friend's mom went to the teacher together and were saying like the bad things that she was doing. Is that correct? Kind of, yeah. So we have calling out is what like we know of saying you did this wrong, like you shouldn't be doing this, calling them out for what they did, and that's pretty self-explanatory. But then calling in is a less harsh way, and it's a more like open arms, inviting them into a conversation of how things can be improved. What would you guys think of that? Like with your teachers who may have harmed you in the past, maybe a teacher who have maybe harmed you very recently, would you want to like call them out for what they did? Like would you want to, or would you be more interested in maybe calling them in, being like, hey, can we have a civil conversation about this?
I feel like there's like a place for both. I guess sometimes calling in can be more beneficial because it's like a here's a solution to what we're doing, and I feel like calling out is saying like, hey, that's not okay, go figure that out. Again, I think there's benefits to both, but for mine, I think I would be more willing to call in and say, hey, I'm good to like reconcile. I'm good to like talk it out, work through it, because I know we're both having problems. Like I get it, we're humans and we need to understand. But yeah, I think there are some situations where calling out is more beneficial and important to do. But for me personally, I would call in rather than call out.
I remember when I called my mom initially after like what happened, she was like, why didn't you like say something to her? Like why didn't you like say anything? And I was like, if I'm being honest, like I was in complete shock. I was just like, whoa. I feel like as much as like I would just want to like go ham and like call her out, I feel like that's also gonna get me nowhere since I'm still stuck here for 4 years. And I do love the program itself, and I wouldn't like want it to like hinder my experience in the program. So I'm kind of just letting myself like ride it out.
If this was something like after you graduated that still hindered within you,
Oh, no, I'm calling her out.
Oh, you are? You're calling her out like after you graduate.
Yeah, like shake her again at graduation and be like, by the way, remember when you told me that I should have named that? Okay.
I actually do have like something to peep in with that.
Sure.
I think there's something really like empowering when we speak up for ourselves. Like even if it doesn't do anything, there's just a sense of empowerment and knowing that your voice can be used for good. Even if it doesn't change the situation, it's changing your beliefs about yourself.
Yeah, I feel like there was a lot of times because like I knew this person for like my director for 14 years. Like I knew her so well. And I feel like we kind of got past the point where I could just call out what was going on because it was such an emotional like relationship and such a close relationship. But I feel like every time that we said something to her about what had happened, it was always more of a call in. Both me, my parents, like my dad almost got involved, which was crazy. I would call out one of the girls on her stuff, but not like, it never like seemed to go in. And it was always like, because you know those people that always play the victim card? Like there's a point where calling in, I feel like never worked. Like whichever way, however I tried to phrase it, it was never gonna work. Still have not reconciled with her. I have reconciled with one of the other girls because she went through a lot, and so I just tried to help her. And she went through a lot because of the studio, and so I would like to say I helped her a little bit, and that we kind of reconciled, but also they're in completely different places now, living completely different lives, so yeah.
I have one more like main question and one to like wrap up. So there's this author, Keene, who has this claim about a power dynamic. So in his writing, he says how a victim, if they're hurt by someone of higher power, there is not a way that the victim can forgive the person who hurt them. Example, like you being the student and then you having a dance teacher there of higher power than you. So Keene is saying that since they're of higher power, you cannot forgive them. So the power equals out.
That's actually so interesting.
Raya, you and the two girls that were not good, Keene would say that you could forgive them because you guys are at like the same level of power, right? Like being dance students. Yeah. But then the teacher, though, that's higher than you wouldn't be able to forgive them unless they came down to your level of power.
I feel like some people can't like come down to somebody else's level because they're so like conceited with the power that they have. So they can't like see through somebody else's lenses, and I feel like that's like a common point in at least one of my situations. Like the person is just so fixated with their power and their position that like they would never be able to like come down to another level to like negotiate with somebody just because they're so hyper fixated on like their title, if that makes sense.
I feel like I have it in my heart to be able to forgive them, like if we like talked about it, like if we
they
just,
took
like,
accountability and stuff,
if we just like had a conversation about it, I think I'd be like, okay, yeah, cool, we're good. Honestly, I don't really know like if it would matter if they like stepped down in power or not. I honestly like don't know what that would look like because I feel like they're older than me. They're always gonna be like my dance coach or like my boss or whoever. Like they're always going to be in a position of power, and so I don't know how it would even look like for them to like step down. Like I don't know what that entails, so I don't really know, but I feel like either way I could forgive.
I don't know, I don't think it's a disagreement with that statement of like power and power dynamics affecting like forgiveness. Because I had been with the same person for 14 years, we were so close that they're almost like, I think she didn't want there to be a power dynamic there, but like there kind of was, but at the same time, I don't know if that power dynamic would change my reconciliation process at all. I don't think I disagree with it, but at the same time, I feel like it didn't really affect my situation.
Final thing to kind of wrap this up, I know Maddie, you kind of spoke on this a little bit. Do you feel compelled to contact these teachers or other girls your age who harmed you? Do you feel compelled to contact them to get a true apology or make amends, kind of reconcile what happened?
I feel like I wouldn't. It's reaching out, right?
Yeah, if you would want to like reach out to them to reconcile things, yeah.
I feel like not, because at this point I just feel like what was said, like you made your point, like you said what you wanted to say. I don't like to dwell on things, so I'm kind of like a forgive and forget type of person. Well, I don't always forget, but I try to forget. So I feel like with this like situation, at least, like I feel like I'm kind of just like out of sight, out of mind. Like every once in a while, it'll like boil like my skin, but like besides that, I'm just kind of like, you said what you said. Like now I know how you feel about me, and now I just have to prove you wrong, and that's that.
I wouldn't say I'm like trying to reconcile per se, just because like I don't know. There's a point where I feel like it's a little too late. But at the same time, I'm like, I want to like maintain a connection with people because I did like have such a long run with them, and like maintaining a relationship, like texting occasionally if there's something that like reminds me of them, and like, because I obviously don't want to lose that connection that I had made, but like I don't know, I can't say I'm trying to like reconcile, but I'm just trying to like keep them in my life somewhat. But obviously, like I've moved so far away from home, and like there's not going to be that element.
Honestly, I feel like I do feel inclined to reach out, but not for like I want an apology from you, because I feel like what happened, but more like let's make amends and let's be on like good terms, even though I'm not dancing with you anymore.
Yeah.
I think I want a chance to explain like more about why I left. I feel like I didn't get that opportunity, so I'd like want to just explain that a little bit more. So yeah, honestly, I feel like I would, and I'd be like open to like reconciliation and just like getting on like the same page. Might be like kind of awkward sometimes, but so like I think that's another reason why I'm like inclined to like reconcile, because like I still feel like tied to the studio in some ways. But yeah.
Okay, well, I hope you get the chance to do that at some point. Thank you all for your great input tonight on this podcast. I hope everyone listening maybe learned something new about making amends, reconciliation in the dance world, or what us dancers go through sometimes with teachers. So thank you very much for listening.